Humans rely on various forms to survive on this planet. However, some among us appear human on the outside, but are actually different beings. An American researcher who specializes in studying unions between extraterrestrials and humans has uncovered at least 1,000 instances of such marriages. He even asserts that as many as 50% of Americans might be wedded to aliens. While these findings may sound far-fetched and hard to believe, an unsolved case from 2015 in the United States has prompted people to reconsider the idea. On July 17, 2015, a team of police officers gathered near Pacific Palisades in California after a resident spotted a long decomposed body inside an SUV. Through their investigation, they learned the victim was a man named Jeffrey Lash, who had been deceased for 2 weeks. Later, authorities visited Jeffrey's home to look into the matter further. But the moment they entered, everyone was stunned. The place was packed with all sorts of firearms, totaling about 200 weapons, over 6 tons of ammunition, and $230,000 in cash. How could an ordinary person amass such an arsenal? Keep in mind that acquiring this collection would cost at least $5 million. So, what was Jeffrey's true background? While no one had any leads on this mysterious individual, his fiancée, Catherine, stepped forward. Logically, upon realizing her partner was missing, she should have alerted the authorities immediately. Yet Catherine didn't do that. She waited a full 2 weeks until Jeffrey's body was discovered, and only then, through her attorney Harlan Braun, did she share a shocking detail with the police. It turned out that 2 weeks earlier, she and another friend had been trying to save Jeffrey in his vehicle, but he ultimately passed away, so the two left him there and headed to Oregon. Catherine's reason for this was bizarre, as Jeffrey had told her before dying to just leave his body behind without worrying, since intelligence agency personnel would take care of it. She followed through because she had always believed her fiancé held a unique identity. He wasn't entirely human, but rather an alien hybrid, serving as a CIA operative, primarily assisting the government with covert operations aimed at saving humanity. On the surface, Jeffrey had to conceal his real self under aliases like Bob Smith. Catherine shared some of Jeffrey's odd behaviors. She mentioned that, perhaps due to his special nature, he would get extremely angry whenever he saw mirrors. When dining out with her, he always paid in cash and switched vehicles each time. Additionally, Jeffrey owned 12 cars, one of which was reportedly worth $100,000 and featured bulletproof capabilities. Maybe because she had grown accustomed to this unconventional lifestyle, Catherine was convinced that just as he said, his handlers would deal with his remains. However, after 2 weeks, Jeffrey's body was still there and had begun to decay. This left her utterly astonished. Records about Jeffrey are scarce, but we know he was born on December 3, 1954. His mother taught piano, and his father was a microbiologist. In 1972, he enrolled at the University of California, Los Angeles. But he dropped out soon after. It's possible that around this period, Jeffrey started using one or more false identities and profiles to carry out secret work for the U.S. government. To this day, Jeffrey's true identity remains a mystery. Neighbors mostly saw him as an oddball, and police uncovered that he had multiple romantic partners, suggesting he might have been a con artist who tricked people out of money to fund his lavish life. That massive gun collection could have simply been his personal hobby. Jeffrey's tale comes across as wildly unbelievable. It makes you wonder why someone would invent such an outlandish alien story if they were just a simple fraudster. Of course, some folks think Jeffrey suffered from delusional disorder. He might have even fooled himself, but could extraterrestrials really exist? In recent decades, people worldwide have reported numerous abductions by aliens. We've previously discussed a man named Stan Romanek, who claimed to have been taken by extraterrestrials 11 times. He described himself as the father of 9 alien children. He added that these offspring lived on another planet beyond our universe. Such experiences aren't limited to men. Women seem to encounter abductions even more frequently. In 2009, a 41-year-old Italian woman named Giovanna appeared on television to say that starting at age 4, she had been abducted by aliens. Moreover, she later became pregnant with an extraterrestrial child. Initially, after the abduction, Giovanna lost part of her memory. She only recalled it later through hypnosis. She remembered spotting a flying saucer hovering in the sky, but couldn't recall how she entered it. She just knew she was floating and surrounded by 4 alien creatures. They telepathically urged her not to move, assuring her she was safe. That day, they examined her body as if she were a lab rat, and even extracted tissue and blood samples. Giovanna's body bore scars and a strange fluorescent-like substance. She explained that this glowing material was something aliens used on her skin to control her body, also serving as insulation. When technicians visited her home to collect samples, they indeed found this substance on her clothes, too. Lab analysis revealed that the material's electrons were highly active, generating a massive magnetic field. But Giovanna couldn't have produced this at home. She also underwent a hospital checkup. Results showed an implant in her brain, though tests couldn't identify what it was. What's even more unbelievable is that the doctors detected what seemed like a fetal heartbeat inside Giovanna's body, but they couldn't spot any actual fetus. Still, this unseen pregnancy led to several issues for her health. The medical team chose to go ahead with a standard abortion procedure. To their surprise, the operation resulted in the delivery of a baby, and while it had arms and legs, its overall form didn't resemble a human at all. This left both the physicians and Giovanna completely horrified. According to Giovanna, the extraterrestrials had explained to her that their kind was facing extinction and required assistance from humans to continue their lineage through reproduction. On top of that, she had managed to persuade herself that she was performing a noble act by supporting them. Yet once this offspring emerged, she viewed it as nothing short of a monstrosity. Truth be told, experiences like hers aren't isolated incidents. A woman from the United States named Kim Carlsberg went through something very similar. She was raised in a devout Christian setting. Following her graduation from high school, she relocated from the American Midwest to live in California. As she reflected on her own encounter with being taken by aliens, she described how, on the evening of the event, she awoke from what felt like a dream only to realize she wasn't in her bed anymore, but instead in an area that looked like an elevator. Shortly afterward, they transported her to a spot resembling a medical ward in a hospital. There, she noticed numerous individuals lying unconscious on examination tables. The entities responsible for her arrival were diminutive gray figures with enormous eyes. Overwhelmed by terror, she let out a scream, and then they rendered her unconscious. As she slowly regained awareness, she found herself positioned on one of those tables. The little gray beings removed a bit of tissue from her coccyx area and proceeded to insert some substance into her nostrils, which made her lose consciousness once more. She realized in that instant that she was utterly vulnerable, like a piece of meat, ready for carving at someone else's whim. However, these kinds of kidnappings didn't stop at just one occurrence. Amid her foggy recollections, she remembered that an embryo had been placed inside her. After a while, it was extracted. Then, during another episode, they escorted her into a compact chamber. The gray figures then introduced a young girl to her. This child appeared to be around 2 years old, with golden hair and striking blue eyes. Yet her expression was eerily detached and emotionless. Through telepathy, the gray beings communicated to her, "Doesn't this little one look lovely? She's actually your daughter." As an educated individual, she understood that revealing this to the world would draw heavy skepticism and judgment. She even struggled to come to terms with it personally. But it was her reality, and there was no way to alter that. Assuming all these accounts hold true, I'd venture to guess that there are far more ladies out there, similar to Giovanna and Kim, who've carried hybrid pregnancies from extraterrestrials than we might ever suspect. Online, I've come across a group dedicated to hybrid offspring. Its participants are all moms who've delivered children that are part alien. These members range in age from 19 all the way up to 60. Their stories share a lot of common threads. According to the ladies in this group, the extraterrestrials are partnering with them to produce these mixed-breed kids in order to develop a more advanced species. Take Aluna Verse, for instance, a young woman from Arizona who shares that she's had 4 boys and 6 girls with beings from other worlds. She's gone so far as to sketch what they look like. For the most part, they resemble humans, but with unusually oversized eyes. They reside aboard massive spaceships. Even though relatives and acquaintances dismiss these women as utterly irrational, confusing their daydreams with actual events, the women stand firm in their belief that everything happened exactly as they describe. Dr. John Hawkes, an anthropologist at the University of Wisconsin, carried out an in-depth examination of human DNA over millennia. His findings revealed that over the past 5,000 years, our genetic makeup has shifted dramatically. This pace of transformation is 100 times quicker than in any prior 5,000-year span throughout history. It really gets you thinking hard about it all. Over those 5,000 years, what on earth has been going on with humanity? Certain experts in the field theorize that during this time frame, extraterrestrials could have mingled with us, leading to profound modifications in our DNA framework. So, what's the real story here? The renowned hypnotherapist Dolores Cannon once guided a woman named Beth through a session of past life regression. Beth had been acquainted with Cannon for quite some time and had always shown keen interest in her techniques. Driven by sheer curiosity, she agreed to try her initial hypnosis experience. Cannon herself wasn't anticipating much, since the majority of such regressions uncover fairly mundane previous existences. But to her amazement, the details Beth uncovered painted a breathtaking chapter of forgotten history. Later on, Cannon incorporated this narrative into her 1994 publication, The Legend of Starcrash. During the hypnosis, Beth vividly recounted a former incarnation as a young man called Tuin. He worked as a hunter in a modest community located in the Alaskan-Canadian region, back in an era predating the Inuit people. While daily life was somewhat basic in those days, the men and women shared responsibilities effectively and got along peacefully. The group firmly held that they were the sole inhabitants of the planet, having never crossed paths with any outsiders. To pinpoint the time frame, Cannon posed some probing questions, starting with how they prepared their meals. Beth explained that they typically relied on ceramic vessels and were skilled at chopping produce and proteins into bite-sized portions. This indicated that, despite their straightforward way of living, the community wasn't entirely uncivilized. Yet the next part of her description took an odd turn. She spoke of a special cooking pot, reserved solely for the tribe's most insightful members. It gleamed like a certain metal and was incredibly durable. At times, it appeared in a reddish-golden hue, while other moments it turned black. According to oral traditions, all the tribe's possessions originated from ancient forebears who had journeyed there aboard vessels from the vast, shadowy emptiness. Tragically, a mishap befell them. The craft was wrecked, leaving behind abundant metal materials. In the years that followed, the people in Tuin's community repurposed that metal to craft blades and cooking ware. Cannon noticed that Beth was describing everything from Tuin's perspective, and his way of speaking came across as straightforward and uncomplicated. Right away, she asked whether the legends mentioned anything about what those ancient ones looked like. Tuin explained that they resembled his own people, except they were taller, with fair skin and hair the color of wheat, and they could perform some truly amazing feats. At first, they wore outfits in a silvery white shade, but after they passed away, the tribe buried those garments along with their bodies, so none of that clothing exists anymore. In other words, following that accident, a handful of them survived and chose to stay, settling down there. Back then, the tribe's population was small, and folks like Tuin had dark hair, tanned skin, and a shorter stature. Tuin also shared that when these elders first arrived, they struggled to adjust. They found the place overwhelmingly heavy. The moon appeared enormous, the sun was intense, and that initial winter was brutal, since their ship didn't carry much food in reserve. He figured their clothes probably weren't warm enough, and many didn't make it through the cold. Plus, the women among them had trouble giving birth. The tales recounted that even if babies were born, they didn't survive long. Eventually, with support from the tribe's ancestors, these newcomers began blending in and getting used to life on Earth. That's how this community got its start. The current residents are all descendants of those ancient visitors and the original locals. Some of the things the elders passed down are pretty fascinating. According to the stories, animals once could talk just like people, which made hunting a real emotional challenge for the tribe's providers. They'd have to apologize to the creatures first, explaining that they had no choice because survival demanded it, and they'd ask permission before taking their lives. The group also established rules against overhunting, since the animals needed to reproduce and keep their populations going. Later, an agreement was reached. To ease the hunters' consciences a bit, the spirits made it so the animals could no longer speak. But to honor that old pact and remind everyone, even in Tuin's time, the hunters still offered apologies before the hunt, treating the animals as if they could understand. Anyway, that's a bit of a detour. Beth's hypnosis session could fill an entire book, so we won't dive into every detail here. From what she shared, the main takeaway is that this group of outsiders, known as the Ancient Ones, likely came from distant planets. Based on the descriptions of them, they might well be beings from the Pleiades star system. Since their spacecraft crashed, they had no choice but to remain on Earth. However, the harsh living conditions here made it tough for them and their initial offspring to adapt. Over generations, this extraterrestrial race interbred with the local tribe, producing descendants who could fully thrive in Earth's environment and continue the line. Tuin's ancestral era was incredibly ancient, with sparse populations, and by his generation, no one was purely one type anymore. We could speculate that every human body carries at least a trace of alien genetics, though Earth-based genes dominate, allowing us to adapt so well here. This idea isn't without merit, and it even aligns with some research. In 2010, Svante Pääbo, a geneticist at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig, Germany, revealed a stunning finding. He demonstrated that early modern humans not only lived alongside other more archaic human species on Earth, but also interbred with them. What surprised even more people was the suggestion that human DNA might include contributions from yet another unidentified species. So, who could this mysterious group be? One intriguing aspect here is that the Ancient Ones in Tuin's story, whom we're guessing are Pleiadians, differ greatly from the typical alien abduction accounts we hear about. Various extraterrestrial beings visit Earth for different reasons. In many abduction cases, they often involve those small gray aliens, and their methods toward humans can seem quite aggressive. But Pleiadians, coming from a higher dimensional realm, have an almost ethereal, godlike appearance, and their interactions with us tend to be more enlightened. We might boldly assume that overall, the aliens we're familiar with lack human emotions. Even though our technology lags behind theirs, these varied encounters at least show that the human form possesses certain qualities they don't have, and that's what they seek, explaining the repeated abductions. Still, no matter which alien civilization we're talking about, whether advanced or rough around the edges, and regardless of how powerful their tech might be, they're all part of the same universe as us. They have to follow cosmic rules and can't just cause chaos at will. At least, that's how I see it. I'm curious what you all think. Thanks for tuning in. If you're interested, feel free to subscribe for more videos, or if you've got extra time, check out the other content on this channel.